That telemetry trace from China remains the most disturbing data point of the entire 2026 season. Fernando Alonso physically released the steering wheel mid-corner because the vibration was too violent to manage safely. This specific mechanical failure confirms the Honda power unit is fundamentally compromised at a structural level, yet the deeper mystery is why the chassis cannot compensate for this known weakness. The team cannot currently trust their own simulation tools to diagnose the root cause accurately. That lack of correlation is arguably more dangerous than the engine vibration itself. Early season reliability was so catastrophic that spare hybrid batteries simply did not exist. Aston Martin was down to its last 2 working units around the Australian Grand Prix. They faced a genuine risk of failing to complete full race distances during that period. This logistical crisis prevented the mileage accumulation necessary for any meaningful performance development. Paddock estimates regarding the exact power deficit remain wildly inconsistent across different sources. Some analysts claim a 60 horsepower thermal deficit versus Red Bull as the baseline reference. Others suggest the total energy deployment gap reaches 136 horsepower against Mercedes. Honda technical lead Shintaro Orihara has notably refused to confirm any specific numerical figure publicly. He stated via blog, F1 Live Pulse, that Barcelona performance was definitely poor compared to other manufacturers. That qualitative admission validates the struggle without providing a concrete benchmark for recovery. We are left navigating a fog of conflicting rumors and official silence regarding true output. Even isolating the engine issues reveals a massive underlying chassis deficiency in the AMR26. Telemetry shows the car was still 3.5 seconds off peak qualifying pace. No amount of combustion tuning can bridge a gap of that magnitude. Adrian Newey admitted he had to redesign the whole car because the engine packaging failed. The current Challenger is essentially a reactive compromise rather than a proactive design vision. Reactive compromises rarely evolve into championship-winning platforms in modern Formula One. Despite this bleak reality, Alonso is reportedly demanding €40 million annually for a contract extension. Spanish press suggests this deal could run through 2027 or possibly even 2028. His continued financial commitment signals profound belief in a future product that does not yet exist. This paradox demands explanation before we can assess the upcoming Zandvoort update package. Why would an elite driver double down on a project with such severe current flaws? The answer lies buried within the confirmed 2027 technical regulations and Newey's architectural response. Understanding that strategic pivot requires us to first quantify the present disaster accurately. Current data suggests the team is fighting 2 separate wars simultaneously. One war is against Honda's internal combustion engineering limitations. The other is against their own wind tunnel correlation failures. Neither battle appears close to resolution based on available session evidence. The alarming finding is not just the vibration itself, it is the systemic inability to isolate and fix that vibration quickly. This points to organizational growing pains that transcend simple component replacement. Newey himself acknowledged this forced maturation process in early August statements. He noted the team has been forced to grow up quickly over the last 12 months. That maturity might be the only asset salvaged from this difficult 2026 campaign. But maturity alone does not generate lap time on Sunday afternoons. The gap between organizational learning and competitive performance remains vast and unbridged. That moment in Shanghai was not merely uncomfortable, it was a genuine safety failure. Low-frequency oscillations traveled through the entire chassis structure without damping. Alonso's hands were literally shaken off the wheel by forces exceeding human grip tolerance. This physical rejection of the car defines the severity of Honda's integration problem. Engineers could not simply adjust suspension settings to cure this resonance. The vibration originated deep within the internal combustion unit's fundamental architecture. Such issues typically require complete redesigns rather than trackside tweaks. Safety concerns escalated beyond normal development growing pains very early in 2026. ESPN and Motorsport.com both explicitly framed this season as an ongoing crisis. Driver welfare became the primary limiting factor for testing programs. You cannot develop performance when drivers fear holding the steering wheel. This safety ceiling artificially capped all subsequent development work. Mileage accumulation stalled precisely when data collection was most critical. The team entered a survival mode that precluded any aggressive setup exploration. Every run plan had to account for potential component fatigue or driver discomfort. Reliability fears dictated strategy more than competitive ambition ever could. News. GP reported the team might complete only limited laps in Australia due to these risks. That operational paralysis directly caused the current performance deficit. Development time lost in March cannot be recovered in August. The hybrid battery shortage compounded this mechanical fragility significantly. Having only 2 functional units meant zero margin for experimental testing. Any failure during practice would compromise the entire race weekend. Spare parts logistics collapsed under the weight of unexpected wear rates. Supply chains could not keep pace with catastrophic consumption levels. This resource scarcity forced conservative management over bold innovation. Conservative management preserves components but sacrifices ultimate pace. The AMR-26 became a fragile artifact rather than a racing weapon. Paddock whispers about power deficits must be understood through this lens. Reported numbers vary because testing conditions were never optimal. 60 horsepower thermal estimates assume clean baseline runs that rarely occurred. 136 horsepower deployment figures include systemic inefficiencies. Neither number captures the full picture of compromised development. Orihara's refusal to cite specifics protects Honda from definitive accountability. His Barcelona admission remains the only official performance benchmark available. Qualitative assessments replace quantitative data in this information vacuum. That vacuum makes external analysis inherently speculative and incomplete. We must rely on observable behavior rather than confirmed specifications. Observable behavior shows a car fundamentally at odds with its driver. 3.5-second qualifying gaps confirm systemic dysfunction beyond engines. Chassis correlation failures amplify every power unit weakness exponentially. Newey's admission of wholesale redesign validates this dual problem diagnosis. The engine did not fit the original packaging concept at all. Architectural compromises cascaded to every downstream subsystem. Aerodynamic concepts were abandoned to accommodate mechanical realities. Wind tunnel models no longer matched actual track behavior accurately. Simulation tools provided misleading guidance throughout the development cycle. Misleading simulations waste precious wind tunnel and CFD resources. Resource waste compounds the original reliability crisis multiplicatively. So where does that leave the championship outlook right now? Near the back of the constructor standings reflects cumulative systemic failure. Point scoring has become an aspiration rather than an expectation. Modest midfield targets replace previous podium ambitions entirely. This recalibration acknowledges harsh technical realities honestly. Honest assessment precedes meaningful recovery in engineering projects. Recovery requires solving both vibration and correlation simultaneously. Simultaneous solutions demand organizational maturity beyond current demonstrated capacity. Newey believes that maturity is finally emerging from this crucible. Forced growth accelerates learning curves painfully but effectively. Effective learning transforms crises into future competitive advantages. Future advantages matter more than present championship positions strategically. Strategic patience contradicts immediate fan expectations dramatically. Dramatic contradictions define Aston Martin's current narrative tension. Tension persists until Zandvoort delivers tangible improvement evidence. Evidence remains scarce despite Honda's internal target claims. Internal targets lack independent verification or external validation. Validation requires on-track demonstration under competitive pressure. Pressure tests reveal truths that dyno runs cannot simulate accurately. Accurate simulation was precisely what failed earlier this season. Season-long simulation failures explain why upgrades remain uncertain. Uncertainty dominates every technical discussion surrounding this project. Project uncertainty extends to driver contract negotiations currently underway. Underway negotiations reflect long-term confidence despite short-term pain. Pain tolerance varies significantly between stakeholders in this equation. Inventory logs from Melbourne show a terrifying operational reality for the pit wall. Aston Martin arrived at the Australian Grand Prix with exactly 2 functional hybrid batteries. 0 spares existed in the entire freight container. This logistical cliff edge transformed every practice session into a high-stakes gamble. Running the car meant risking total weekend elimination before qualifying even began. Engineers had to choose between gathering setup data and preserving hardware survival. Data collection ceased whenever battery health parameters drifted outside safe margins. Safe margins shrank daily as vibration damage accumulated invisibly inside sealed units. Sealed units cannot be inspected or refurbished, trackside under current regulations. Regulations mandate complete factory returns for any high-voltage component servicing. Factory turnaround times exceeded the gap between flyaway races significantly. Significant gaps force artificial mileage restrictions on both cars simultaneously. Both cars sat idle during sessions where competitors refined tire models extensively. Refined tire models translate directly to Sunday race pace advantages. Pace advantages compound over 24 races into championship deficits. Championship deficits demoralize staff and erode sponsor confidence progressively. Progressive erosion threatens the very funding required to solve these problems. Funding pressures create vicious cycles that accelerate organizational decline. Organizational decline makes attracting top engineering talent increasingly difficult. Difficult recruitment prolongs technical crises beyond acceptable timeframes. Acceptable timeframes for power unit integration typically span multiple seasons. Multiple seasons of development were compressed into one catastrophic year here. One catastrophic year exposed supply chain vulnerabilities ruthlessly. Ruthless exposure revealed that Honda's quality control processes were immature. Immature processes produce inconsistent component lifespans unpredictably. Unpredictable lifespans make strategic planning functionally impossible. Impossible planning forces reactive decision-making at every single juncture. Reactive decisions prioritize short-term survival over long-term performance gains. Performance gains require sustained testing programs that reliability issues prohibited. Prohibited testing left aerodynamic concepts unvalidated against real-world airflow. Unvalidated concepts produced the 3.5-second qualifying deficit observed earlier. Earlier observations confirmed that chassis correlation was equally broken. Broken correlation meant wind tunnel upgrades failed to deliver promised lap time. Promised lap time never materialized because simulation baselines were wrong. Wrong baselines stemmed from power unit behavior deviating from original specifications. Original specifications assumed smooth integration that never actually existed. Non-existent integration forced Newey's emergency architectural redesign mid-cycle. Mid-cycle redesigns consume resources earmarked for pure performance development. Pure performance development stalled completely while structural fixes took priority. Priority shifts explain why the AMR26 never reached its theoretical potential. Theoretical potential remains relevant only for understanding 2027 direction now. Direction matters because Alonso's contract demands signal continued commitment. Continued commitment despite hardware nightmares suggests insider knowledge of future solutions. Future solutions hinge on Honda meeting revised internal targets for Zandvoort. Zandvoort upgrades represent the first tangible test of corrected manufacturing processes. Corrected processes must eliminate the low-frequency vibration plague permanently. Permanent elimination requires root cause identification that has remained elusive. Elusive root causes keep safety concerns active throughout the season. Active safety concerns limit driver confidence in pushing mechanical boundaries. Pushing boundaries is essential for extracting maximum performance from new platforms. New platforms demand trust that currently does not exist between driver and machine. Machine distrust manifests as conservative driving styles that mask true car potential. True car potential remains unknown even to the engineers who designed it. Design contentions collided violently with manufactured realities this season. Manufactured realities dictate that recovery will be gradual rather than sudden,